Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a really great day. As for me, I'm having a fantastic day. Now, with that being said, I am glad to be alive. And I'm sure you're glad to be alive. We are all glad to be alive. So one thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact that we are alive to see history changing right before our own eyes. Now, it doesn't matter how you look at it, whether that's finally the colonial empires are about to end because we're seeing the final phase of it, which is what's happening in Gaza currently. Another one is that Africans are finally rising up and taking over their resources in their country. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be the topic of today. Now, with that being said, African man leading a revolution against the West, Ibrahim Traore. Now, if you haven't noticed yet, and I'm sure I have said it many times, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Welcome. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I'm African, by the way, in case you haven't noticed. And this is a good news for me. For all the brothers and sisters out there, why do I say that? Because clearly, Africa has been in a position of, well, poverty for such a long time. Even though I would say that we are the richest continent out there, but yet we are the poorest out there. And so Ibrahim Traore is finally taking over and making a change. So all the people out there who tells the Africans, go back to your country, you African booty scratchers. Go back to your land, we don't need you here. You niggas and, Negroes and you name it. All the slurs that they're throwing at Africans and stuff like that. Now, one thing that I want to tell you, if you're watching this video, is that this is your opportunity to make that a fruition, to make that possible. All you have to do is go tell your political leaders, mainly Donald Trump, to get the hell away from Africa. Okay? And if you're in France, tell Macron with his husband to get away from Africa. That's all I gotta say. All right? Now, let's go ahead and get into this because I'm not gonna lie to you. I've been trying to keep up with the story recently, and I ain't gonna lie, Ibrahim Traore is making some big move and he is becoming a threat. Why? Because without Africa, let's be honest. The European nation, you guys need Africans. You need the resource. You make it seem like Africa is the poorest country in the world. Then why the fuck is the leaders there? Why are they trying to keep the troops there? Why is it that when an African is trying to rise, the first thing they try to do is a coup to take him down? And I can give you some example. Libya is a really great example of that. Anyway, that's enough chit chat. Let's get it.
Heard, but there is a revolution against the West brewing in Africa right now. And this one man from Burkina Faso is the reason why. Let me introduce you guys to 37-year-old Ibrahim Traore. He is the second youngest head of state in the world right now, and what his supporters say he represents is simple: African independence. Because here's the truth, Africa is the richest continent in the world in terms of resources. From gold, diamonds, and oil to cobalt, lithium, and rare earth materials that power your smartphones, my camera, our electric cars. Yet at the same time, most African countries rank among the poorest in the world. So what's up with that? Well, partly, and remember, there's many reasons for one thing to be true. One of the reasons is that for over a century now, multinational corporations and foreign powers, well, they have been extracting Africa's wealth without building long-term prosperity. Couple of examples for you. Mining contracts often send up to 90% of profits abroad and leaving behind environmental devastation. Foreign companies often win billion worth infrastructure deals like to build roads, airports, and railways, but then rather hiring locally, they import workers and send profits home. France has even charged former colonies so-called colonial debt and still controls 14 African countries' currencies through their CFA franc. And there is like endless examples of this, and I'm not even talking about the new wave, which is the tech industries. And they are just scooping up all of the lithium and the cobalt to transition to green energy, while the African countries themselves rarely get more than a cut of the raw material price. And this is where Ibrahim Traore comes into the picture. You see, Burkina Faso is a former French colony and when he rose to power in 2022, he began accusing France of neocolonialism, which in other words is when a country is still kind of trying to control the other, but now through more hush means than just directly. So things like propaganda, government destabilization, coup attempts, assassinations, things like that. So when Traore came in,
And in case you haven't noticed, he has over 20 assassination attempts on his life. Yeah. You know what's crazy? Is that America is now trying to say that Ibrahim Traore is a dictator, and he is oppressing his people and stuff like that. In case this guy doesn't mention, which I will tell you right now, he is not taking the pay of somebody who is a leader. Rather, he's taking the pay of somebody who is a soldier. Meaning what? He didn't increase his pay whatsoever once he took position of leadership. So this brother right here knows that what's most important is that he wants his people to prosper. And so what he's doing is he's going around making deals. Recently, he just came from Russia making a deal with Vladimir Putin. And I'm hearing rumors that even North Korea is sending troops to go and protect him. Things are getting out of hand. Meanwhile, everybody's talking about 100 men versus one gorilla and so on and so forth. This brother here is making moves in Africa and it's hush hush. Nobody seems to know about it. Nobody seems to talk about it. Why? Because they understand that this right here cannot go out there. But the Africans are very much aware. There were riots, not riots, I'm sorry. There were parades or whatever you want to call it in France. In European land, there were Africans standing up in solitude with Ibrahim Traore. In Africa, they're saying, hey, don't touch Ibrahim Traore. This man needs to be protected at all costs. This is what's going on. This is what's going on. The power is shifting in the hands of the people.
Into power, he made a whole bunch of major changes. He ordered French troops to leave the country, ending military agreements with them. He banned the use of British and French colonial-style judicial wigs in effort to decolonize their judicial system, although this is largely symbolic since Burkina Faso in particular doesn't necessarily use them. It's more like Kenya, Nigeria. But he's also been making changes far larger than banning wigs. He started cutting ties with foreign companies involved in Burkina Faso's infrastructure development, like roads, airports, like I mentioned before. And now he started replacing them with locally equipped and trained workers, also buying almost 1,000 road building machines for them to use. He's introduced policies to boost local control over food production and processing. He's pushing for greater state control over their own energy, particularly electricity, so they reduce dependence on foreign suppliers and improved access. And then, this is probably the clearest statement to the West yet, he's been buying back a number of the country's major gold mines. And buying back being the key word because they were previously owned by foreign entities. And the thing is, he didn't just take it back with force, with military control, he bought it. He paid $80 million for 2 of the country's gold mines. He called the purchases a reclaiming of national wealth from exploitative foreign ownership. But the story gets crazier, right? Of course it does, because what started in Burkina Faso is now become something much bigger. They have now joined forces with Mali and Niger to form the alliance of Sahel states, basically saying, we've got each other's backs and we're all done with Western influence. Niger themselves ended an agreement with the US that allows the US troops to operate in their country. Ivory Coast and Senegal are now also pushing to remove foreign military bases. And a former Nigerian senator described Traore's actions as the spirit of a continent yearning to be free, dignified, and prosperous. And I think that is exactly why we are seeing it slowly transition from one country in Africa into Africa as a whole. Because a major question that many of these countries are still asking and increasingly asking is, why is a country that's so rich in resources and literally powers the world so poor themselves? Now, here is the main...
It's because of the leadership. It's as simple as that. They put bad leaders in position of power, knowing that these leaders are going to make bad deal that's not going to benefit Africa whatsoever. That's what's been going on for such a long time. It's not because African people are not smart. We are very, very smart. But it's the people in position of power who are betraying their own people. If you see my previous video, that's exactly what I said. If you want to take down these Negroes, all you have to do is send one of their own.
Major problem with this, because We've seen this before. We've seen revolutions in Africa and they haven't turned out well. For example, and this is a pretty crazy one, back in the 1980s, Thomas Sankara led Burkina Faso with almost the exact same vision Traore has now. He started rejecting foreign aid, nationalizing roads and railways, and called for a true African independence. And
take a guess at what happened to him. Spoiler alert, he got assassinated.
you want to know what happened? Just 4 years later, he was assassinated. His policies were reversed and those French firms regained contracts for roads, railways, and ports in Western Africa. So, is Traore walking that same dangerous path? Well, we don't know, but there are reports that he has survived 19 assassination attempts in just 2 years. However, it's important to note that not all of these claims have been verified. One of the most widespread reports, which is also very hard to verify, is that the head of his security was apparently and allegedly offered $5 million to kill Traore, but he rejected it. We don't know who offered him that money, and
France did. I will tell you right now, it's France. Yeah. You got to understand something. I'm telling you right now, France ain't shit without Africa. Macron and his husband ain't shit without Africa.
we also don't even know if this is true. But this is what's so tricky in these situations because it's very hard to differentiate between valid geopolitical criticism and straight up lies and propaganda, especially if you're from the outside looking in. For example, earlier this month, General Michael Langley, the head...
Another example of why they're sending their Negroes to go take down another Negro. Yeah, this big-headed, you know what?
Head of the US military in Africa, accused Traore of using Burkina Faso's gold reserves to benefit his military junta at the expense of his population. Now, Traore's supporters were not pleased with this at all, and crowds of protesters started gathering and chanting, "Long live Captain Traore." Now, one of those people who turned up at that protest, a musician named Osibi John, said something that probably represents a lot of what his supporters believe. He said, because Colin Powell lied, Iraq was destroyed. Barack Obama lied, and Gaddafi was killed. But this time, their lies won't affect us. It's also important to note, and this is probably a factor when it comes in with propaganda and what side to believe and what side not to believe. While Burkina Faso is severing ties with the West, they are also strengthening ties with Western enemies, particularly Russia. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, they're not gonna like that. Now, it's only fair to note that Traore does have his critics. Some people call him a dictator because he did rise to power in a coup. In fact, Burkina Faso has had the most coups out of any African nation. Technically, he was never elected by the people. In fact, he's postponed elections. He's also known to crack down on dissent and critics, saying no country is ever developed under democracy. And he's also banned pretty much all Western media. So it leaves you questioning, is that because they have genuine criticism that he wants to silence? Or are they actually pushing colonial agendas in the country like he accuses them of? There's also this huge wave, and this one's kind of just hilarious, but these false claims made online, not by Traore himself, but by his supporters. They're making claims like he's paid off all of Burkina Faso's debt, that he's already made healthcare and education completely free. And then there's also bizarre, there's all of these AI-generated videos of musicians like R. Kelly, Rihanna, Justin Bieber, Kanye West, Eminem, Beyonce, all singing songs about him, when of course, they haven't. Point is, there's a lot of videos about him making false claims, and it's not him saying that, but it makes this whole situation really, really tricky to be like, what is real, what is not. But either way, this is an incredibly interesting topic that I would love to hear your thoughts about. What do you think?
Yeah, my thoughts. What I want to say is, obviously, this brother is doing something good for Africa. Many leaders have not really tried to make the move that he's doing, and so currently, again, 19 assassination attempt, like you said, that might not be true, but hey, truth of the matter is, once an African comes into a position of power and he is trying to take power back from foreign colonizers, what happened is they tried to assassinate him. He just showed us an example of Gaddafi. You even have some African leaders, such as Nigeria, who are going against what he's saying. I mean, what more do you need? This brother is trying to better Africa. This guy is trying to unite Africa because Africa is a massive continent that can prosper in major, major ways. But yet, for some reason, it's like we just can't seem to realize that. And so, like I said in the past, is that they put their own leaders there to make sure that the resources that they need continue to keep going back into the European land to keep themselves rich and prosperous. And so he noticed that. Everybody notices that. It doesn't matter who you are. You can talk to anybody today, even people who are not in Africa. They will tell you that the reason Africa is in the position that it's in is simply because colonizers. They come in, they start a coup, they put the leader, and then they steal the resources, and then they start like fight amongst them. Meanwhile, they're taking all the resources. I can keep going on with this, man. Like I said, I've been looking into this situation and I've been trying to keep up with it. All I gotta say is, may Allah protect our brother Ibrahim Traore, and I'm gonna leave it there. If you made it this far, please don't forget to leave a like and sub.